on this beautiful October 7th day. Members of council, it is 6:03, so thank you for bringing me back to the chair. You have an agenda before you. Any additions from administration?
No, Your Worship, not at this time.
Okay. With that, Deputy Mayor, the motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I make a motion that we accept Monday, October 7th governance and priorities agenda as presented.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Okay. And that is carried. Moving on to after adoption of minutes is the public input session. This is the time that we allow residents to talk to council about anything that's not on the current agenda. So usually we earmark 15 minutes for this, and we ask everybody to keep it within 5 minutes presentation. Is anybody that would like to come forward and speak to council? Okay, please do. Come on in. Gentlemen, there's a sign-up sheet there. If you can sign your name, and then again, speak directly into the mic of your name, and then go ahead.
Good evening. Initially, I guess before we get started, I'm here concerning the water rate structure and the changes that were made last year. And I have a case to present against that. I had signed up for this 6 weeks ago, and there was some sort of confusion when I phoned in to confirm everything this morning. My name's not on the list. So like what I have to talk about is not going to happen in 5 minutes. I can't present the case properly and questions back and forth in 5 minutes. So I don't think there's any point in me starting it right now. If you can get it on the books, then I guess I have to reschedule for the 16th. I just want to make it known that I want some input into the new water structure and the pricing. And I guess we have to do it on the 16th unless there's ample time at some point tonight that we can talk about it reasonably for a period of time.
Okay. Like I was talking to you in the gallery, do you want to start the conversation now so that we can start thinking about this?
Well, for me to go, I have a presentation put together for me to read the first 3 paragraphs, in 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I just don't think that's going to do justice to what I want to say.
Okay.
Like, so, I mean, I can do it, but I'm sure we're going to be 15 minutes or a half hour minimum.
Okay, so you also said that you also have a presentation. Was that forwarded to administrative staff so that it could be on this agenda?
No, she said it was optional to forward any information.
Okay. And you sure don't want to stop the conversation? You've introduced it. You want to talk about water rates?
Well, how much time will I have?
Well, we earmark 15 minutes, and usually after 5 minutes, I'll see if anybody else is in the chambers that want to speak. If not, I'll give you another 5. And then after that, then you get questions of clarity from members of council. Because everybody behind you has 15 minutes as well.
I understand.
So if you can't make your presentation in 10 minutes, is another 5 going to make it?
I think I'll just reschedule for the 16th because I need more time. I don't want to just rush through it. I mean, this is our livelihood. I need to have ample time to discuss it properly.
Okay, and you said you have a presentation. I would advise you to send that to administrative staff so that council has a look at it, and then we can follow on things. Because if you come with us with a presentation and you want to give us handouts, it'll take us that much longer to decide and read it later on, because then we will definitely not have any decision for you then either.
Okay, all right. So if I was to come back on the 16th, that's still going to give you ample time for us to have some input before you make decisions on the water system pricing?
Well, there'll be some input, but I don't know if it has direct impact or not, because we're also doing a corporate plan, which then we approve the rates and everything else in January, I believe, right? Is that correct?
Your Worship, the bylaw would be coming, I have to check, the end of November, early December for approval.
Okay, so the end of November.
So it's still some time before you make the final decision then?
Yes.
Would that be correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I think I'd rather do a proper job of it, if that's all right.
Okay, so you like to come back October 16th?
Be back on the 16th, and I'll do it by email.
Okay. Can I ask somebody just to follow up that email to these 2 gentlemen and make sure that we get their presentation and then have that into our agenda?
Yes, sir, Your Worship.
Okay. Okay, I'm very sorry that I don't know how it got missed, but we welcome you coming back.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else in chambers like to talk to council on something that's not on the current agenda? No? Actually, we have a couple minutes, so we have our General Manager of Strategic Services. Why don't you introduce your family and your special guests that are here? They're trying to sneak away here.
Chikawi. We have 2 students that we're hosting for our family with us over the next 10 days. Iran and Mayuki are with us, and my daughter Stella and my husband Simon are here, and so we're really enjoying having the Chikawi students with us, and lots of fun and busy week, so thank you very much.
Okay. Welcome to Chambers and welcome to the town of Stony Plain. Hope you guys have a good stay. Thank you. Okay, before moving on to presentations and delegations, anybody else like to address council on something that's not on the current agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to presentations and delegations. And today we have 4.1, which is our presentation from our MLA member of the legislature. So welcome, Mr. Thurton. There is a sign-up sheet, so you would have to sign in, please.
I'll make sure the spelling's right that way, so. Well, thank you. Okay, I'll pretend like I'm signing for the picture. Okay,
There you go.
there you go.
There you go, because I'll send it to your staff so that you have something.
Awesome. So, well, first of all, thank you very much, Your Worship and Stony Plain Council, for inviting me out here today. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you, to give you a little bit of an update about what's happening at the legislature, about some of the projects that are currently facing many of our residents that live in our amazing riding of Spruce Grove, Stony Plain. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of the issues, first of all, that I've come across my desk, and then I'm going to just kind of give a brief update about where we are with some of them. Unfortunately, tonight I'm going to be coming and asking for a lot of feedback. I don't have a lot of answers, so I apologize in advance if the expectation is I'm coming up with a bunch of answers, but we're working on it, and I do expect to see some resolution to some of these issues over the next little while. So I'll just kind of run through a couple of these issues, and then I'll just kind of give you a brief update about where I'm seeing it right now. So first of all, this Highway 779 upgrade, as you know, is obviously of a big concern to many residents here in Stony Plain. It was actually a very proactive meeting, Mayor Choi, that yourself and a couple councilors we had with Minister McIver a couple of days ago, or last week I think it was. So this was one of the issues that we brought up. So there's some continued discussions about completion dates. I think we're going to be actually talking about 779 on the next item that's coming up here under the agenda, but construction is being undertaken as we speak. I do know that one of the longer term issues that we're going to be talking about is transfer of the road authority. And so I know Minister McIver is extremely intrigued by some of the suggestions by Stony Plain Council to kind of look after management of that road versus the actual transfer of ownership. I have had a couple of discussions with Minister McIver's staff since our meeting, and those discussions are ongoing. I do expect that to be resolved, I say fairly shortly, but in government timelines, that could be, quite a ways. It takes a long time to get anything done, but I'm a regular attendee in the office of Minister McIver, so that's ongoing. As well as under the same kind of umbrella as 628. As you know, the 628 is completed to the borders of Golden Spike Road and Spruce Grove. But the real issue is how do we provide an additional transportation access from Stony Plain to connect the White Mud Freeway? So I know I've had discussions with many MLAs, Minister Madu, who's a MLA in Edmonton Southwest and Minister of Municipal Affairs, and we've talked at great length about that extra transportation corridor and how it will actually help take traffic off of Yellowhead and 16A and create different transportation options for the residents of Spruce Grove and Stony Plain. So those discussions are ongoing. Just to kind of echo Minister McIver's comments when we were talking last week, as part of the capital plan, they are going to be releasing that list with the budget in the next couple weeks, and so we're going to be able to see then about the status of 628. But regardless, I just want you to know that I'm continuing to advocate for that, one way or the other. I mean, there's a lot of work, as you know, that has to take place on that road that's been talked about, I believe, since Bill Purdy was the MLA for this area in the late 70s. As I made mention to Minister McIver, and I know that's always top of mind. So those discussions are ongoing, and probably the next time we meet, there'll be more of an update about where that one project is on the long-term capital plan for this area. As you know, as a province, we're in tough fiscal states right now. We have a pretty large deficit. Over the last 4 years, we experienced 6 credit downgrades. That affects us all. I mean, that means that we have to pay extra interest payments for our debenture borrowing, and that has an effect on, funding frontline services. So I don't envy Minister McIver's role right now. He has to prioritize that capital project list, but right around the Edmonton region, not just including right across the province, but just when you look at Edmonton, you have Ray Gibbons Drive in St. Albert, you have the railroad overpass on Highway 60, you have 628 upgrades, you have extra lanes on Yellowhead, you have Highway 19 upgrade between Devon and the airport, and you have the Highway 2 overpass by the airport. I mean, that small list of projects equates to hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, that's a lot of money in terms of capital projects, and just on the west side of Edmonton. So he has his work cut out for him, but I'm actively working with him as well as other government MLAs in the area to kind of try our best to advocate for our respective communities. A transfer of ownership as well of 628, I mean, that's more of a long-term discussion because I don't think anyone wants 628 as it is right now. I mean, obviously we want to see it upgraded, so that's our number one priority, is make sure it's on the capital list. In terms of non-infrastructure initiatives, there's been a lot of discussion about the new school site that's going to be located here in Stony Plain, and I've had numerous discussions with Minister LaGrange and her staff. So as of now, there's no expected delays in that school project. We're full speed ahead with planning. And so I know for your Old Town project, in terms of really rehabilitating that area of Stony Plain, that's a key initiative. And so that one individual project was one of my very first meetings that I had planned with, as a government MLA after I was elected on April 16th. So as of now, I don't see any issues with that. Mr. LaGrange has assured me that the project is still moving forward. It's recognized as Stony Plain as one of the fastest growing communities in the province, and we need to ensure that the kids in our community continue to be educated. So we'll stay tuned in terms of just making sure that the progression of that comes along. In terms of healthcare, Minister Chandra, I've had numerous meetings with him, just getting updates about the current state of Westview Medical Center here in Stony Plain. Obviously, there's been, many residents have contacted me about wanting enhanced medical services, having the medical, hospital here as a main, location for everyone to go to for a really to highlight Stony Plain as an area of health excellence, I guess you would say. So Minister Chandra is supposed to come out over the next month or so and visit with me at Westview Medical Center. So when that tour actually takes place, I'll let your staff know so that councillors or the mayor can actually join me as well, because healthcare and having adequate healthcare services is something that affects all of us. And so, and just in terms of the timeline, to give you an idea in terms of expectations, the ministers have been actually spending the last 2-3 months over the summer and visiting a lot of remote communities around the province. As you know, our province is pretty diverse from, the riding of Peace River, Lacrete, you have 7 hours straight north, or 7 hours straight south, and you have Medicine Hat. And Lethbridge, and so they've been spending their time visiting a lot of those areas. But now that we're going into sessions starting tomorrow, a lot of the ministers have already expressed interest to come out to ridings in the capital region, Spruce Grove and Stony Plain being one of them. And Stony Plain, as you know, has a lot to offer. And so I know Minister Furr is interested with coming out to Chamber of Commerce meetings. Minister Chandra wants to come for Westview Medical Clinic. Minister LaGrange wants to come out and visit a number of school sites in the riding as well. So Stony Plain is very high on the radar, so expect to see a lot of visits from cabinet ministers over the next couple months. And MSI funding, just to kind of give you a little bit about the long-term MSI funding for the town. So Minister Madu has talked quite a bit about this at AUMA. So at this stage, I can't speak about a long-term funding for MSI. I would love to come here and announce and for all the happiness I know it would cause for you. But until the budget is actually released, we just have to, keep true to the process that's coming forward. And so there'll be some more details about the long-term plan regarding MSI for municipalities. The cabinet and the premier and myself are extremely aware of the impact and the benefits that municipalities have with maintaining, sidewalks and roads and providing rec spaces and library space. I know there's a lot of library lovers here, and I would consider myself to be one of them. So we just have to wait for the budget to come out and see how that shapes up. Just regarding, I wanted to highlight one initiative that actually was talked about and passed, and then I can kind of open myself up for some questions, but it's really Bill 7. And I just wanted to highlight that a little bit, and that was the Municipal Government Amendment Act, and it's a property tax initiative. And really, this was one of the tools that municipalities have talked to us during the campaign period as a very important tool to be able to create incentives for businesses to be able to come to your community and to kind of spur economic development. This was an amendment that was actually put forward by municipalities for municipalities. And this really gives you the tools, we believe, to be able to really start targeting large scale, either commercial enterprises or in some municipalities in the province, large industrial clients to be able to enter their communities. We found that when we look at the global stage, that our municipalities, especially the ones east of Edmonton, were not in a competitive advantage to try to showcase their municipalities compared to other jurisdictions such as Texas, North Dakota, or even some Canadian jurisdictions, and large industrial employers, that had projects in the sum of billions of dollars that could provide tens of thousands of jobs. We were losing just because we charged more for property tax. And so we wanted to level the playing field. And even today, when I was meeting with caucus, we were hearing stories about large industrial providers that are coming back to the province to say, tell us a little bit more about the industrial heartland, or about the Edmonton area, or about Fort McMurray, conversations that they wouldn't have had 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago, but now they are, because all of a sudden the playing field is leveled off. So we're hoping that obviously these decisions come out sooner than later about new employers coming to the Edmonton area, but outside of those large multi-billion-dollar employers that obviously we're trying to get to come to our community. This allows communities like Stony Plain to be a little bit more selective and targeted when it comes to your economic development and making sure that people know that Stony Plain is an amazing place to do business, because we all know that in this room, but we want to make sure that those large employers that are looking for areas to have their next business location realize that Stony Plain, it's a great place to do business, and it makes economics to do that, not just because we're an amazing community. So that was really the reason for Bill 7. So that's all I have for now. So at this stage, Your Worship, I'm willing to take any questions. Hopefully I can even give some answers, and just thank you for the ability to come before your council right now. So.
Okay, thank you, Emily Turton, for your presentation and being there with us during our meetings at UMA and through our meetings with the ministers. Definitely appreciate your support. Okay, members of council, any questions of clarity and understanding? Okay, Councillor Matties, go ahead.
Thank you, MLA Turton, for coming out this evening. Really appreciate it. A couple of comments. First, one question with regards to the budgets on the October 24th. So when after that would we see MSI funding information?
It would be pretty quick when all the information gets released. I know your staff is pretty amazing. I'm sure they'll delve right into the budget pretty fast and get you the numbers. But I mean, that is the purpose for the budget. We're going to have about 3 weeks to discuss it in the legislature. Mm-hmm. So during that time, if your staff have any additional questions, or they like to kind of see if there's any nuggets in there that would specifically pertain to municipalities, they can contact my staff, and we'll do our best to help get you the information that you need.
Great. Just one other comment that I have. You're aware that at the AMA conference there was a number of sessions with regards to recycling and extended producer responsibility and circular communities. And recently, actually it was just today, I had the opportunity to read, it was an open letter to a lady named Greta Thunberg. And Greta is the young environmental conservationist. And this was on LinkedIn today. And she basically, this letter was written by a fellow named Shashwat DC, and he is a feature editor for CNBC. He's from India. And he was referring to Greta as a She-Hulk of conservation. and he concurred with her concerns regarding climate change. However, he disagreed with the critical approach she was taking when she was talking about past generations and kind of casting blame on past generations for our current situation. Instead, he suggested it's time for a progress check, citing the advancement of society over the past 2 centuries and how far we've come over a long period of time. So people are living longer, they're healthier, lots of very good positive things about our society. But he wanted to say, instead of blame, he suggested action through the following quote, and this was written in what's in the language Sanskrit, and he translated it for us today, and he said—
Thank you for translating it.
Yes. Yes. Don't mourn over the past or excessively fret over the future. Worry about your actions in the present time and live by them. So my question, Albertans want to be environmentally responsible. So can you please provide an update for me regarding the provincial government with regards to a framework for Alberta that we can, so that Albertans can focus on progressive actions to protect the environment so that we can live by this?
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for the question, Councillor Matties. And obviously, I don't have a lot of the supportive information, but I get you some later on. But I can speak to a couple points on that, just about some steps that our government has taken to make for a cleaner climate and cleaner Alberta. So the one step that does come to mind, and Minister Nixon was very quick to highlight this along with Minister Savage, or Minister of Energy, was about the difference our government's policies has been in the electricity market between the supply market and the capacity market. We did make a switch from the previous government. Now, most people may ask, well, what does this have to do with, climate change? But, it was that one policy change, for example, and it's major emitters that make up over 60% of the carbon that's being released in our province. So our policy has always been to work with private industry to be able to be a little bit more proactive versus trying to target the consumer, such as, for example, a carbon tax that used to be instituted. So the switch that Minister Savage just recently made, the switch from the supply market to the capacity market, that was the main incentive for Suncor, for example, to be able to add on a multi-billion-dollar cogen plant onto their sites up in Fort McMurray. Now that one cogen plant, what it actually does is take the natural gas that was typically being flared off under the old system because there was no incentives to be able to do it, and now is actually being converted into electricity. This one simple policy change created a multi-billion-dollar project which created thousands of jobs, which had the environmental impact of removing hundreds of thousands of cars off the road by, generating electricity versus just flaring off natural gas and other byproducts during the process. So that's the approach that this government is wanting to take, and just one example where we want to work with private industry, which I said before, accounts for 60% of the emissions in this province. And then once we get a good grasp on the 60% of emissions and working with those, private enterprise, corporate stakeholders, then we can actually look at ways to be able to deal with the remaining 40%. And so Minister Nixon has said that that is a major priority for him. It's a major, priority for this government. And over, I would say, the next year or so, you're going to see a lot of initiatives that are rolled out that not just address the 60% of those large industrial emitters, but also the 40%. Because at the end of the day, and I know Stony Plain has a very strong tradition when it comes to environmental stewardship, there's nowhere else for us to go. This is the only planet we got, so we got to make sure that we take good care of it. And I think, wherever you are in the political spectrum, we want to make sure that we have a great earth and planet for our kids.
Thank you. Anything else from members of council?
Mr. Mayor, just one last thing, just to kind of wrap up. I want to take this opportunity to commend yourself and your leadership and the leadership of your council as well. It's been fascinating to work with you in this capacity. I mean, over the last 8 years, I think everyone that knows my experience and history on city council, I've worked, on beside you as a fellow city councilor, but seeing, Stony Plain Council in action and how you advocate for your community, how you push initiatives, and how you don't take for granted that cabinet ministers and government officials are going to come to you. You are very aggressive with going out of your way to make sure that the initiatives that you want to see forward, that you're, spearheading for your residents, are addressed and looked after. And I do think that puts you ahead of many other communities in the capital region. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity, Mayor Choi, to commend you for your leadership, and to the rest of Stony Plain Council for thank you very much for not taking it for granted that the initiatives that you're pushing forward are being looked at. So thank you very much for being great stewards for your community. Thank you.
Okay. So on behalf of council and our residents, thank you much for your presentation. It's always good to have an update of what's happening over at the legislative building. Excited to see maybe some of the projects get started this year. I think you mentioned Highway 19, Highway 60, Highway 628. Those are the initiatives that will affect and kind of build a better region. I have a question regarding Highway 16A. The current state of it is kind of really rough, actually, if you've driven down it. I'm actually glad that the lines got painted about a week and a half ago, so at least you can see where your potholes are instead of trying to figure out where the road is and dive into them anyways. Any status on how that repair and maintenance budget is going to go in terms of upkeeping the 16A?
Thank you very much, Your Worship, for mentioning 16A. So as my staff could probably attest, short of driver training and registries issues that are affecting many of the young families in our area, probably the highest amount of emails I've got is actually on 16A and about line painting. So it is definitely an issue top of mind for many residents here in Stony Plain. So as you mentioned, Your Worship, that the road painting was done about a week and a half ago. I've lost count of how many emails I sent to Minister McIver's office asking for that. So I was actually excited to see that, that one part of it done. But you are correct. The road is in dire need of repairs. So I guess we'll wait till the budget to come out. I know we have some additional information requests to Minister McIver's office just to kind of get an update. I think long term, as was talked about at the meetings with the minister, control of the road is probably in the strategic interests of the town, just to be able to bring it up to the standard that you wish. I mean, as you know, the road authority is transferred over to the city of Spruce Grove further to the east, further over to the east. Long term, I would probably envision, from my discussions, that's the long-term goal of this council, is to have a little bit more control over that. And I think Minister McIver, from our last meeting with yourself, Mayor Choi, as well as some of the follow-up meetings that I had with him, is intrigued about the possibility of working with the town in just a little bit more proactive of a manner than just leaving the status quo as it is. I don't think anyone in this room or in the minister's office wants to maintain the status quo. It's just going to take a little bit of time just to work through the details. So,
okay, thank you. And then I just have to put one more thing about MSI. As a former municipal councillor, you realize how important MSI is for communities to continue to build our roads, our infrastructure, and provide operating for our communities. I just need you to, again, advocate for us, municipalities. Out of the tax dollar that everybody pays for in terms of federal, provincial, and municipal taxes, municipalities only get about 9% of the tax dollar. Mm-hmm. The other 91% is split between the federal government and the provincial government. So the more cutting and downloading that comes down to us, we're left holding a heavier burden with our 9%, and then the 91% that's held by the province and the federal government.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a former city councilor, as you referenced, I understand the value that MSI has when it comes to the budget process. I know you guys are going to be going through your budget here in November as well. It's a major part of your budget. I get it. It's something, myself and other ex-councilors in caucus are constantly talking about. Minister Madu is very aware of the impacts that MSI have on local communities, on the ability for residents to have, a healthy community with, sidewalks and roads that are repaired, and the parks and playgrounds, protective services, library funding, and it's all connected. And we also realize it's only one taxpayer. And so, the message has been loud and clear, and I'll do my best. But it has been loud and clearly received. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and appreciate you taking the time today. Have a good evening, and then good luck in session.
Perfect. And just so I can, because I love bragging about you guys when I'm amongst my caucus colleagues, is it okay if we take a quick picture before I listen to the rest of the presentations? Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, that'd be fine. That'd be $5 each of us, so that's 35
$5? Or one MSI deal, right? So, awesome. Thank you. Like in Reagan's Spruce Grove, that I got a picture of you guys first. So. So, how's my hair? Is it okay? Just like mine. This is good looking as hair. So awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks for your work. Appreciate the support.
Never change chairs. This one's 3D. Change it. He's got here.
Okay. Members of council, we'll move on to 4.2. So we have our Highway 779 project status update. So good evening, Mr. Zhang. Again, there's a sign-up sheet there.
Good evening, Your Worship, and councillors, and MLA Turton, and members of the public. My name is Jeff Zen. I'm the construction manager for Alberta Transportation. I'm here to make a brief presentation on Highway 779 project. I'll keep it fairly high level, but if you have any detailed questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the very end. Here we go. The overall intent of the Highway 779 project is to widen the highway, to provide a 4-lane urban cross-section between south of 16A all the way to Willow Park, north access, and from that point on, 2-lane cross-section to the Southern Town limits, which is south of West Terra intersection. We started the project by having a functional planning study completed back in 2003, and in 2006, we started design of this 779 project. A public information session was held in 2010 to brief the public on the plans of the upgrades. The project is divided into 2 different phases. In the phase 1 was from south of 16A interchange to just north of the railway tracks, which is 47th Avenue. That work commenced in later part in 2010 and completed in December 2011. And then the current construction project is the phase 2, which started in May 2018, and we're still ongoing. So my focus is the phase 2 of the project. So as I mentioned before, the overall intent is to widen to provide a 4-lane cross-section, and then we're going to install traffic signals. We're going to do access consolidation. We're going to do the illumination work, installing new lights, and then the construction of the pedestrian trails and sidewalks network. There's a cost-sharing arrangement with Town Stony Plain on some of the items, mostly related to pedestrian accommodation. The later on into the construction, we have modified all the illumination to LED to conserve energy. When the project was designed, it was still under the previous generation, which is a high-pressure sodium, which consumes about 4 times more energy than LED lights. So we made that change. There's also another cost-sharing item between us and the town is the pond on the west side of the school that try to collect water in the area and then drain across the highway. We started the project assuming this project is going to be a 2 construction season project, but due to utility delays and weather delays, especially this year, it's extremely wet across the province. We have approximately 50 days. We lost 50 days to rain this year, and also the utility delays on site that we couldn't complete the project this year. The project is unfortunately pushing to 2020. We are forecasting the work is 70% complete to date, which means 30% remaining, and 30% may translate to roughly 4 months of construction into 2020. So we are forecasting around a fall 2020 completion of the phase 2 of the 779 project. So, just some pictures to show you the situation. It's there's a lot of unknown utilities, and when our contractor opened up the ground, and they discover things that couldn't be discovered before, and there's a lot of challenges on that front. In terms of communication, we recognize this in town. It's right next to residents who live here and business who operate on a daily basis. We have weekly site meetings where the town's representative is being copied on the meeting minutes. We appreciate the town lending us a hand to use their website to communicate with public in terms of road closures and stuff. We also have our 501 website that we use that to also communicate with travelers regarding the delay and the timelines. We will continue this effort in the coming year. We are getting into a stage what we call a preparation for winter shutdown, because winter is coming. We will be filling the potholes, make sure that the road is safe for winter operations. We will discuss with the town representative on roles and responsibilities in the winter and any concerns the town may have during winter period. That's the end of my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for coming and presenting to our council and just giving an update. Members of council, any questions of clarity and understanding? Councilor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question has to do with the access that the buses are taking into Willow Park. That, I believe, is still under construction. Do you have any updates? We would like to see that completed very soon in order for the buses to get in and out of that access.
Sure. The current construction are undertaken by the town. You can see the areas being fenced off. That's a town contract and contractor to complete the grading work. When the towns, the idea is that when the town's grading work and underground work is done, our transportation will come likely next year to finish the construction of the surface of the road, where then the bus can utilize the proper access at Willow Park North access, which you can see there's already a signal there, right? It's a well-controlled intersection, and take the service road to access the school.
Thank you.
Councilor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming out and giving us an update. My question is regarding the way you have built the road. I want you to help me to help my residents understand why you would take a perfectly straight road and make a bend in it in front of Willow Park. where you could have went 100 feet more and made a perfectly straight turning line and kept the road so that it was not a deterrent. Can you explain why that was done that way?
I don't have a good answer. I have to look into the design files to see the reason behind it. I will get back to your administration on that answer.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Matthews?
To our guest, I have a question related to that. I went to the website today to look to see if there was a diagram or a description that I could visually see what the end result was of this, because I too was a little bit surprised in terms of the configuration of the road. And, you know, for our residents, it would be great for them to have a visual of what this is supposed to look like when it's finished and have that on our website.
We don't have the drawings posted on our website. I do have the drawings available, and they're public documents.
Okay, so we could have one to go on the
And
website.
you can, I think you already have them.
Yes, we have them, and we actually provided them on the council filing cabinets a little while ago.
Yeah, I'm talking about for the community. You know, it'd be nice.
I don't have, the drawings I provided to the town was a very thick drawing set that we use for our contractor to see. I don't have a pictorial drawing that I can provide. If this is something that matters to the town, I can go back to see how hard it is for us to develop a drawing. Is it the Willow Park is the only location you guys are interested, or do you want a drawing for the whole project limit?
Well, just for me, basically, it's because it's taken some time. It would be very nice for the community to know and to be able to see what is planned and what will be the finished result. So it would be nice if we could have that.
Okay.
If it's not too much trouble.
Your worship,
Mr. Zhang, so we're talking about the updates, the community consultation on 2010. So the stuff that we rolled out in 2010 would be similar, because I think there's so much time that has gone by since that a refresher to the residents would be actually a good idea, because you know, it's good for information, but then people forget because we continue to live our busy lives. So now it's 2019, and next year is 2020, so it's been 10 years since that consultation.
Okay. I can see what we can do in posting some information. We do have a web page specific for this project, but it's not being, I haven't seen any updates on it, so we'll look into that.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie?
I have a question to you in regards to, as you mentioned, we had quite a bit of rain this year. We also had two significant events in the town of Stony Plain in July 8th and July 15th that caused some overland flooding throughout the town. I wonder if you could comment on the state of the sewer system, the storm sewer system, during those events, and the performance of the installed storm pond during those events.
Unfortunately, I can't comment on those two specific events. I'm not aware of any situation related to those two events. What I can comment on is the pond that's in operation. That pond does accommodate both Alberta Transportation's drainage and the portion of the town's drainage. So I can only imagine it's a positive, not a negative.
Councilor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I remembered something else. I've noticed that on several of our roads on 779, since the work has begun, our left-hand arrows have been taken away. For instance, on that would be 52nd and 779 by the red. There used to be a left-hand arrow, and now there isn't. Does Alberta Transportation have some kind of strategy that is eliminating left-hand arrows? There's one there, and there's, I believe, on 628 and 779. Again, it would be very helpful to have a left turn arrow there. and with our new signalization, and there's none. So is there a new strategy that Alberta Transportation is proposing that is eliminating those left turn, those green arrows?
It's not a strategy, it's simply a matter of how many vehicles turning. If you only have a handful of vehicles, handful may be a wrong term, but if you only have very few vehicles making the left turn and try to provide a dedicated timing for just one or two vehicles making the left turn, all the other traffic have to come to basically a stop. And that could jeopardize your intersection further than if you're simply allowing people to make left turn on green, which means they have to judge and take their turn. In this particular intersection at 52nd, we have done the engineering and modeling to see which way is better, and it came out that not having a dedicated left turn provides better level of service for the intersection. That's the reason behind that.
I guess nobody asked my opinion on that, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, clarity? Okay. I have a question regarding, you mentioned that there was utility delays. Can you expand on that? Because a lot of residents and even members of council and myself don't understand what utility delays are. We understand rain, and you can't build when it's raining and all, et cetera, but what are utility delays?
Right, so when we start this project, we asked our consultant to do hydrovacking to locate the different lines in the ground. And we provide that information to the contractor. And when the contractor started in 2018, there are new lines that are discovered that wasn't discovered by our consultant in the first place. And there are lines that discovered at a different elevation and different orientation compared with what our consultant has discovered. It is the unknown that basically when you discover unknown utilities or utilities at a location that they shouldn't be there, then our contractor basically have shut down and frog leaped into the next intersection or the next location. And that does cause delay to the contractor because they are looking at us and our consultant try to provide them an answer what to do. And that's what's causing the delay. And whenever we think we should be doing, we have to consult with the utility company to get their okay, and sometimes that's not a fast process.
Okay, thank you. So you said that you guys hydrovacted the lines so that you can provide it to the contractors, but some lines were not hydrovacted, or they were never marked, so it's not on.
So I'll give you an example. There's same line, the line never moved, but we hydrovac in the design phase, 30-meter spacing, 2 points. And we hydrovac two locations. We assume it's a straight line between those 2 points. But when the contractor start hydrovacing, he hydrovac not at the same location, try to get a better understanding where the line is. Then we find the line doing snaking. That's something that there's no way my consultant can discover during the design phase. It's a purely coincidence. Unfortunately, in this job, is happens quite a few times.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see no more hands up. I have another question for you. So you mentioned that you guys, AT is getting ready through the contractors to do winterization so they're ready for the winter. What is the projected start time for next year?
We haven't received the contractor's schedule. That they typically don't give us a schedule of next year's start until closer to say April or May. Because that's all kind of depend on the weather of next year and the frost, how fast the frost will come out of the ground. Typically, though, based on past experiences, typically around the last part of May when the contractor would want to restart again.
So end of May, early June?
Typically right after the May long weekend, that's what we see contractor restarting again. So yeah, late May, early June.
Okay. Sure. And then I have another question regarding some of the residents that have talked to me, and I was part of this project and understanding it a long time ago, is the back alley paving for the houses that are directly facing on Highway 779, and I think the government worked some deal to switch the garages the other way. And one of the conditions was to pave the back alley so for better access. In terms of the contracting, will that be done before the road gets ripped out or after?
It's certainly not happening this year in 2019
Right, that's
because
fine.
the back alley is being delayed because of utilities directly underneath the back alley. I cannot answer exactly the timing, which one is going to go first, but they're going to happen in 2020. I can get back to you on the contractor's plan, which one is going to go first.
Please do, because I think, with the limited access on 779 when construction starts next year, then every homeowner there will have to be accessing the back alleys. And if they're still not upgraded, like the province has promised through the AT contracts, well, then that's going to get beat up and it's going to cause a lot of headaches. And
Understand.
any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you for taking your time and appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, moving on to our next agenda item is 4.3, the Stony Plain RCMP third quarter detachment report. And today we have our good old inspector here. So, Inspector Locken, welcome to our community.
Thank you. Good evening. I initially forgot my stats at the detachment, but I was able to retrieve them, thankfully, through the power of communication. So I know that you've got a few other things on the go tonight. I'll try to be brief, but I've got a lot of good things to say. So I'd also like to, project those to you guys as well. Now, insofar as the new building, we've been in it just 2 days shy of a month, and I can tell you that things are going really well. The initial push was just to get into the building, realizing that we would have to change some processes and how things flow in combining different buildings under one roof. But it's overall, considering the large scale move that we did, it was fairly painless, and we had minimal downtime. In fact, we weren't down at all. We continued policing, and nothing was compromised in that regard. We moved half of the watch, got them up and running, and then moved the other half, and calls for service were not affected at all by the move. And I attribute that to some really good planning and organizing by some very good people that work at the detachment. So I'd like to thank especially the members and support staff who dedicated their weekends. Some even canceled their holidays. So they did a really good job of making this painless as possible. So overall morale is very good right now at the detachment. I think people are very happy and appreciative. As I said at the flag raising ceremony, we really appreciate the support of the councils who made this a reality for us, because it's a phenomenal building, and it will only serve to attract really good employees to the region in the future, because that was one of the hurdles that we often encountered was the condition of the building. And our detachment had a bit of a reputation of working in small cramped quarters, and now that's no longer an issue. So we've got good morale, we've got a great building, we've got good work, we've got great communities, so nothing but good things in that. Now, just a week before we moved, we had the musical ride in town. I won't go on about that very long, but we did see a lot of positivity from the community in showcasing the RCMP and some of the good stuff that we had to offer in the displays that we showed to the community as well. Another item that I wanted to just touch on is the license plate reader. I don't think I've brought that up at a previous council meeting, but through funding through the town of Stony Plain and the city of Spruce Grove, we were able to purchase a license plate reader. And in working with Carl and Dave, we were able to move very quickly, because it was a very sought after piece of equipment, and whoever spoke for it and had the funding in place first, and they worked together with us. So we were able to get that, and so we're one of 3 in the province that have one of these. And basically, it's not a live database, but every morning the database is updated, and it shows all stolen vehicles, We can add pointer vehicles to it if there's any undesirables in our area that we're looking out for. And basically, it reads every piece of text that that police vehicle passes as it drives down the street. It reads road signs, it reads license plates, it reads everything, but specifically what we're looking at is license plates. So just to give you an idea of how well it works, on one of the first days that we took it out, within 10 minutes, we had 2 stolen vehicles. And just for members to physically run those plates themselves or call them in over the radio, we wouldn't have the same capacity, because this thing reads them and within seconds immediately tells you whether or not that's on the system. So they're expanding the use of it as well, so that it has access to motor vehicles branch databases. That's coming in the future, and that'll show expired plates and things like that. So now, in terms of things that we're doing in the community, the members are concentrating on school zones, because school is back, and we've had a lot of positive feedback from the community about the patrols of school zones in the mornings and the afternoons. We are concentrating on impaired driving. We're also concentrating on distracted driving, and working with the CPOs. We have a joint operation coming up where we'll be focusing on distracted driving as well. Now, I know that in speaking with Carl, there was some concern that property crime and specifically thefts from vehicles are up in certain areas. And I can say, yeah, that has happened. Some undesirables have moved into the community. We know who they are. We are concentrating on them. We have charged them with certain offenses, and they will be held accountable in court. But again, we're as good as the public that we serve, so we're asking the community to continue locking their vehicles at night, removing valuables from their vehicles out of sight, because when you leave them out there in an unlocked vehicle, chances are they could be a target. So, but we have had some success. We know who these people are. We are working on them. We are dedicating resources in the crime reduction unit and giving these folks some extra attention. That said, I have good news in terms of the statistics. Overall, persons crimes and property crimes are down, and I'm talking in the time span that I'm using is January until the end of September. I just got these stats this afternoon, fortunately, so they are very current. So it's January until the end of September, and persons crimes are down 9% overall in the town of Stony Plain from that period of this year to last year. And comparative to how we're doing with other municipalities in municipal detachments in Alberta, we're down 9%, they're down 7%. In property crime, we are down 19% over the same period of last year, and comparative to other municipalities in Alberta, they're up 2%. So it's a 21% difference. So, I mean, we're not perfect, but we are doing well. And I mean, we can't take all the credit for that. As I keep saying, these are great stats. I would like to think that they are as a result of, you know, some of the initiatives that we've been doing, and some of the patrols that we've been doing, and some of the targeted enforcement, the crime reduction unit, all those, although I don't want to completely, you know, take the credit for it, because sometimes those do depend on, obviously, the community and education, the weather, the economy, a number of things. But comparative to other communities in Alberta, Stony Plain is doing better. So the only other thing that I have is the grand opening is this Friday, and Mr. Mayor and anybody that's wanting to come is welcome to come, and it'll be outside in the front of the detachment. There'll be a number of dignitaries there, and we're really looking forward to the official opening. So, pending any questions, that's my presentation.
Thank you, Inspector Loken, for your presentation, and it's good to hear that property crimes and personal crimes are down in the communities, which is a good thing for our community. Members of council, any questions and comments for clarity? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Inspector Loken, for coming as well. As you know, community policing is important to this community, and with the change in our detachment, you could say that the community has a perception that we've lost something there. But to maybe possibly alleviate some of those concerns, I did have a resident who proposed the possibility or the idea that maybe having an office space in the community. Would that be something that you guys would be able to utilize?
Well, considering the proximity of the new detachment, I mean, I'm not going to say no, but we do have a great building that's just down the road. The problem that we run into with that is a lot of our work is computer-based, and we have to use certain databases and to do our work. And there are a lot of rules around security of the spaces that we occupy. For example, we had a space that we haven't used for probably a decade up in Onaway, and that's the sole reason around it is because of the security. We can't put computers in there, and for somebody to sit there without a computer is, you know, considering the staffing levels that we have, it wouldn't be an efficient use of resources. But we can certainly look at other ways that you know, we can be more available to the community. I know that at the senior management level in the detachment, that's something that we're alive to, and we've had discussions about not wanting to, you know, basically abandon Stony Plain now that we've physically moved out of the town. But we are encouraging members to, you know, if they do take a lunch break or coffee, come to Stony Plain. When you fill up the car, come to Stony Plain. They're still doing the school patrols, and they're still doing patrols here. Some of the things that they have been doing late at night have led to, you know, catching some people, particularly a couple break-and-enters in progress, because of their proximity in the area. So they haven't left, and I know that we have been getting some feedback from the community because we've been asking, and it has been mixed reviews. There's some people that say we don't see you as often, some people are saying we see you more. So, yeah, in answer to your question, specific to an office, I'm not sure about that, but we can certainly look at ways of continuing to be visible in the town.
Thank you.
Councillor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Inspector Loken, last year about this time, we were all talking about the cannabis and those changes that would be bringing. So my first question is, have you noticed some of those fears that we had with enforcement? Have you noticed that they have come to fruition? And my second question then is, with the change in edibles coming, I think it's this month, do you anticipate any problems there? And detection is a big issue, especially when it's something like edibles. Mm-hmm. So have we taken any precautions in those areas?
Right. So in answer to your first question about noticing a big change, really we haven't. We haven't even, we've dealt with a couple complaints of people who aren't respecting other people's spaces when they're smoking it, but really it hasn't been prolific. It hasn't been, you know, there's only been a couple. In the area of impaired driving, I think that we have had a couple cases where the people have been high on cannabis and driving. Now, that's not to say, and I can't definitively say, whether or not that would have happened or not had it been illegal, had it been still illegal. So I don't know. But in answer to your first question, we haven't seen a huge difference, no. And in answer to your second question, last year at the beginning of school year, we did have some issue with some edibles because even though they're not legal yet, some people do possess them and do have them. And certainly I do share your concern about, you know, something that looks like a candy potentially, and detection. Like, I mean, because, you know, if a teacher has something at school that looks like a gummy bear, are you going to seize it from a child, or is it just going to be a gummy bear? And so, you know, that it could be difficult, but I know with our SRO program, they're alive to this and they are on top of it. And at the beginning of the year last year, There were a couple small incidents to do with edibles, and they were dealt with appropriately, and it was no longer an issue throughout the year. Now, once it becomes legal, and there is more of it, I think it'll be kind of a, same thing as the legalization of cannabis. We'll have to wait and see and respond accordingly.
And driving while impaired. In my mind, it was always, you could almost tell because of the smell in the car. But with edibles, you're not even going to have that detection. And so, how are we prepared to that issue?
Well, and I fully expect our impaired driving, and not just in terms of cannabis and drugs, but in terms of alcohol. I expect our statistics to rise because of the mandatory alcohol screening that was implemented, and then along with that, and our detachment taking a very serious stance on it and providing a lot of training with the Crown prosecutors and with subject matter experts in the terms of in the area of impaired by alcohol. Also, we have trained a lot more members and into drug detection and how to recognize the signs and how to be aware of the signs of drug use. And so, something that potentially before, where they just didn't smell alcohol and the guy was acting a little strange and the guy might get a free pass, that's not happening, I would suggest, as often anymore because of the training that's been provided to the members. And so we do have some members that are trainers as well, and so having a detachment the size that we do benefit from that as well, because we can spread them evenly throughout the watches, so that if somebody does a traffic stop and we have one of these subject matter experts on the watch, they can come to the scene and they can make an assessment as well and go from there.
One more thing, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor. Just a great thank you and congratulations on the musical ride. It was a great day. You met my little grandson, and he had a wonderful time. And I know that every other child that was there going through the enforcement vehicles and the helicopter was a big thrill. So thank you guys very much for organizing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And at the grand opening, we haven't fully decided whether or not we'll be doing this yet, but one thing that we're looking at is, because it was such positive response, especially from the young people, but it was all ages that liked it. We won't be having the helicopter or anything like that, but we're looking at opening up some vehicles and the motorcycles and everything like that for kids to go in and climb around and have a look.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Councillor Matties?
Evening, Inspector Loken. How are you tonight? Good. A couple of questions. You had mentioned the license plate reader. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that will enhance your work in terms of what you've seen in other communities that have had it, and what is the cost associated with that? And then my second question is with regards to property crime and theft. First of all, thank you for helping to reduce our numbers, but is Spruce Grove experiencing the same reduction?
They are. They are experiencing, and I can't remember because in all honesty, I got the stats late this afternoon, and I had time to pull them off and print them off and look at them for Stony Plain, but I never looked at them for Spruce Grove. But a couple of weeks ago, I did go to a council meeting in Spruce Grove, and they were experiencing a similar decline in property and persons crimes. And so, and with them, our detachment area was doing better than other areas throughout the province as well. So it is similar.
Good.
Yeah. And in terms of the license plate reader, it's technology out of California. Now, the exact cost, I believe, was around $30,000. And so, I mean, on the face of it, it sounds like a lot of money, but really, we have been able to, like I said, detect a number of what we call pointer vehicles. CPIC is the National Police Database where information is entered into, and one of the things that can be done is enter a vehicle as a pointer vehicle. If it's suspected in a crime, or it's tied to a specific undesirable person, or then it'll alert you that person is in your area, and then you can provide some extra focus in that area. But another thing that it does is stolen license plates or stolen vehicles. It'll alert you to those as well, so that if and stolen vehicles were, a huge issue, and continues to be a focus of us. But like I said, let's see, theft of motor vehicles in Stony Plain, January to the end of September this year versus last year, we're down 26%. Whereas across the province, they're up 2%. So I think we are doing something right. And with this license plate reader, it's no secret. Like we want the public to know that we have it, because we want criminals to know that if you are going to be doing activities in our detachment area, we're going to make it tough for you. And I don't want to say that I'd rather they go to somebody else's area, but truth be told, if they're not in our area, then because my focus is our detachment area. That's our focus, right?
Thank you very much.
Councilor Fletcher.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Inspector Loken, for coming out tonight. It's always nice to see a member of the local detachment within our community, and better so in our chambers. I've got 3 questions for you tonight. The first question being around the drug trade within our communities. I've had several phone calls from residents regarding a perception of a drug trafficking gang going on within our communities, especially at the younger level. I'm wondering if you could speak to that at all.
Well, in any community, there is going to be a certain degree of drug activity that takes place. And I think I know the specific case that you're talking about. In that case specifically, I know that the complainant was probably not completely satisfied with the police response. But the reality is that we can't have somebody sitting at that one specific location 24/7. And as I just spoke about in the last topic, there's always displacement. So if we have somebody at that location, it could take place a block away. That said, I mean, with the drug education that the SROs do and that kind of thing, the intelligence that they gather combined with the drug unit, I think that we do a fairly good job of deterring drug activity in our area. And I wouldn't say specifically with the youth in our area that we have a huge problem. I mean, it is, we're alive to it and we are aware, but I think, like you said, it is perception. In the one case that I'm thinking of, where this person was upset that we didn't charge this person, it was investigated, it was looked into, and the kid was selling vape juice. And so, I mean, yeah.
Can appreciate that, thank you. Second question is, has there been any consideration from your detachment to put officers within the communities that are specific on a 24-hour type of deal?
Are you speaking in terms to Stony Plain pays for X number of members?
Yes.
And then having, well, I know that the detachment now is in Spruce Grove. A huge part of a police officer's job is the paperwork and the administrative work that comes along with it. So unfortunately, that's one of the realities that come along with it, is wherever home base is, that's where they will spend a significant amount of their time. That said, we have encouraged the members, and we are telling the members, and we have broken it down into zones where members are expected to particularly spend less time doing paperwork on the busy nights and the busy times of day, and not be in the office. So the expectation from us is that they'll be out in the community, particularly in the community that they're assigned to.
Thank you. And one of the last question would be the new opening of the new RCMP detachment. Many residents have been interested in having an open house where they actually get to see whatever they could at there. Has there been any consideration given to that?
there's been a lot of consideration, there's been a lot of discussion, and we haven't completely 100% finalized it yet. I know that I fielded a phone call from somebody who asked me about if we're having an open house, and the discussion that we had at that time was that we wouldn't be having an open house. Just, it's a sad reality of the current world that we live in. As I was saying to Carl before the meeting here, we do have a number of people that really don't like us and have been doing counter surveillance on us, have been videotaping us, have been posting it to YouTube. And there are people that, we do receive intelligence reports on that really are out to hurt us. And so it's a sad reality, but we're not able to give full tours to the public. But we are coming up with ways that we can somehow compromise and still give them an idea of what their tax dollars have gone towards. So I think what we've been looking at, and so just even as late as this afternoon, we're having a discussion with Strategic Communications in Edmonton, and so what we're looking at is having the front counter or front vestibule and meeting area open to the public, and having, and I know that this isn't as good as actually walking through it, but having a slideshow showing different areas of the detachment. And kind of the reason behind that is number one, that these people that we know want to hurt us, they're not going to know exactly where we are. They don't know where the members are sitting. They don't know where people work and kind of the intricate details, but it still gives them an idea of what would happen. And the other is that we are a functioning, secure building that operates 24/7, and we have been up and running for some time. So there's a lot of sensitive information that's around and out, and just by virtue of the radios and the paperwork that's around and everything. So as I explained to the guy that called to me, I said, we could take you down a hallway, but then we'd say, well, you can't go in that room, and this is our weapons room, but you can't go in there, and this is our cell area, but you can't go in there because there's prisoners, and this is our plainclothes area, but there's source information in there, so we can't take you in there, and we would take you down a hallway where we don't even really have pictures hung yet, so it would be a pretty boring tour. So hopefully the compromise that we're coming up with can be a little bit better. And as I spoke about with the vehicles out behind, so what we're looking at is having that the opening ceremony in the front, having the front area open with some kind of a slideshow that Stratcoms is going to put together for us, and then in the back area having the vehicles and some of the equipment and everything for the public to see. And then we haven't fully decided on this yet, but I think that some people are interested in the cells, and even if we have prisoners, what we can do maybe is open up a cell area depending on our resources at the time, and allow people to see a couple of the cells, and if they want to get their picture taken in it or whatever, they can. Because the cell, although it's a secure area, it's not a private area. A lot of our undesirables spend a lot of time in there, so it's not a secret. So that's kind of the compromise that we're looking at right now.
Sounds like a very good compromise. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie, please.
You've talked a lot about visibility in the community, and I really appreciate that. I know it's been a focus of the detachment since moving into Spruce Grove to have members as visible as possible in Stony Plain. I really do appreciate that. You also mentioned the SROs, our school resource officers, several times, and I want to continue to acknowledge how well respected and how valuable those resources are within our schools from your detachment. It's truly a resource that no matter what money we put into it is incredibly valuable, and I know will help our students and will help you. So I want to see us continue that. I was wondering though if you could talk to two pieces. One, you mentioned about the amount of time a member spends doing paperwork and in the office, and I'm just wondering if you can give a little bit more of a descriptive of, for instance, a percentage of the amount of time they spend in office versus on the road. And then if you can talk to some of the initiatives that are in place and are coming in place to help with that, such as the court document packages and things like that.
Certainly. So as far as a percentage of the amount of time, one of the things that we looked at, because I know that you have a fully trained police officer who spends a portion of their year doing training and keeping up to date on their mandatories, it doesn't make sense for them to be standing in front of a photocopier and making copies, being paid what a police officer is paid. So we have looked at different ways, and since I've been here, we have made some changes. We've initiated, with the support of council, we've now got 2 watch clerks on each watch, and there's 4 watches, so we have 2 watch clerks who are support staff that do a lot of work that was previously done by the members. So that frees up the members to go out onto the road. And another thing that we've just implemented a few months ago was the disclosure, the electronic disclosure unit. And so we were one of the kind of projects that I did about a year ago was determining kind of a cost analysis breakdown of what it was costing to have a member doing this and the cost of paper and everything versus electronic disclosure. And so, and fortunately, the Crown has come on board at about the same time that we intended on doing this, and they wanted electronic disclosure as well. And so there was a little bit of resistance on the part of some of the Crowns, but they were initiating it anyway. So that discussion that I had with the Chief Crown, he was pushing forward with it anyway, so it wasn't coming from us, it was coming from both of us. And so that has freed up a member because in discussions just anecdotally with the members and asking them how much of their time did they think they spent doing court packages, and they said probably about 25% of their day was putting together court packages. So if you know, we can have people putting together disclosure, I mean, that's not saying that the member's still not responsible for putting it together. He or she still has to provide the person that's in that role with all the information that they require. But the person that actually puts it together and organizes it and sends it to the Crown, that's somebody else that's not an active police officer out on the street. So we are certainly looking at ways, you know, with support staff. In the terms of our reader's position, the reader does provide oversight and recommendations on follow-up on files and just making sure that things were done properly and reflecting stats appropriately. And so I know that she is very busy and that she we basically triage the files that she looks at. She looks at the high-risk files and she looks at the ones that are important to the public and important to us. And so some of the more minor offenses don't get reviewed at that level. There's still a supervisor that reviews it, but that said, with the reader position, that kind of frees up one of the supervisors, a cop, to provide maybe some more road supervision at a scene versus sitting in an office on a computer providing supervision that way. So support staff are certainly a great asset to the detachment in freeing up the members to go and do these things.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you. And I just wanted to say, you know, we really appreciate the innovative and progressive work that you've done on the detachment and continuing to push to look for new solutions that help get officers back on the road and hopefully reduce the burden of administrative work that are on them. You know, we're always happy to continue supporting that, and I was really happy that we were able to add the additional watch clerks to free up members, because ultimately we know that the cost of a watch clerk versus the cost of an officer is significantly different. So we want to make sure that officers are on the road doing their job. So I appreciate you continuing to support those initiatives and continuing to be creative as possible to get your officers as active as possible in the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And move on to Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is more of a personal type question. I had the opportunity to speak with a member, as well as I read an article, but in it, well, first, the member sort of discussed the idea that illegal marijuana dealers will always be a bit of a problem because drug dealers, it increases their offering, and maybe I can get you hooked on marijuana and you'll eventually come to me for something else. So the first question that made me worry, or made me ask, are we targeting, say, that illegal dealer more aggressively now than we were before? And then second to the article I had read, it had sort of alluded to the idea as marijuana as a bit of a form of like, almost like money in the criminal underworld. So that got me thinking, should legal users be concerned at all that maybe this contraband might find its way into a legal supply? Is the quality of the stuff that's sold at the stores, is that secure?
Right. Now, I'm not a subject matter expert in drugs. you know, the information that I know is picked up through conversations with the drug unit and you know, just with what's going on in the detachment. So as far as those who are dealing marijuana, I know that our statistics have gone down in terms of drug enforcement, but that said, the focus of the drug unit is more on, and I don't want to say not marijuana, but it is more on the methamphetamine, fentanyl, and the drugs that are doing the most harm in our communities. So that's where they focus their resources. That said, people that sell weed often sell other stuff as well. Now, as far as, you know, getting them, the illegal dealers, getting them hooked on, you know, marijuana, and then it could lead to other drugs as well. I mean, that's an age-old argument that, you know, so, and I'm not going to voice my opinion because I do see, I do see that both sides have fair argument on whether or not marijuana is a gateway drug. That said, what we're finding, what the illegal dealers are doing is you don't know what you're getting in the stuff that you get from them because the cocaine is laced with fentanyl, the marijuana may have fentanyl, and in some cases it's because it's cheaper to cut it with fentanyl than it is to add more cocaine. In some cases it's because it gets people addicted and then they're repeat customers, and if you lose some in the collateral damage of people dying from their addictions, and I'm only saying this as believing that that's how they think, because I mean I'm not a drug dealer, but I'm thinking that a lot of the reason why they would put this stuff in to get people addicted because they're repeat customers, and if you have, you know, a bunch of people that can't live without it and coming back to you, and you lose a couple along the way and you're making a lot of money, then so be it, is kind of their attitude. But that said, I know that there has been, just again in speaking to people, because a lot of times people are honest with us in having these frank conversations, and you ask them, why don't you go to the store where you can, the dispensary where you can buy it, and they said, well, number one, supply, and there is positives and negatives. The positive is that you know what you're getting, you know kind of what the THC content is going to be, you know what it's going to do for you. On the flip side of that, people tell me that it is more expensive to go to the dispensary than to go to their usual dealer, and sometimes it's somebody that they've gone to for a long time and that they trust them. So that said, I mean, there are, unless you're a grower and you're selling it direct, there are a lot of people in the chain who may add something along the way, and so I would just caution people that if you are buying from a dealer, you don't fully know what is in that and what's going to happen to you if you consume it. So I don't know if that answered all your questions. I kind of jumped around all over the place.
Yeah, no, that, I mean, works for me.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions and comments? Okay. Thank you for your time tonight, Inspector. I have just a couple questions for you. As you're aware, this is going to be a hard budget year for many municipalities across the province and even within our province itself. You mentioned SOR, and a couple of our councilors mentioned SOR. One of our partnering communities have chose not to fund the portion of the SOR, and we chose to pick that up this year with the City of Spruce Grove, but only for this year. In your view of how policing works, how vital is the SRO position to our communities?
It's very vital. Essentially, that person, and this didn't come from me, I'm using their words. I don't want to steal their words, but I think it was Gord Marshall that said, you're essentially the town cop for a small town, because it's got its own unique problems, it's got its own demographic, it's got problems that we wouldn't be aware of as a police force being on the outside of that community. And so the SRO is very in tune with all kinds of issues, and it's amazing the number of problems that they deal with. When I say problems, issues that never become big issues. And so if the SRO wasn't there dealing with counseling between parents and kids, basically providing corrective action to a kid, or even just solid advice as to helping direct their moral compass, or what to do in times where they're faced with peer pressure or when they've been a victim of some kind of online exploitation. It's something that normally the detachment wouldn't be alive to because the kids just wouldn't show up at the detachment to ask those questions. Whereas if we have somebody that's actually at the school present and has developed a rapport with those kids, it really does help. And I mean, I think that just the comments that I've seen, not only online, but people that have gone out of their way to call me to express how important they see the SRO role as being. I see it as a vital role to the detachment. And you know, on the flip side, down the road, of course, if you prevent something, you'll never realize the work that it didn't cause you. But I would speculate that it does save us a lot of work in the amount of things that the SROs deal with in the schools before they become big issues.
Okay. Thank you. And just another question regarding member time and cost savings. I think you mentioned that 25% of a officer's time is done photocopying and getting packages ready. That could be better used having a person that's qualified and has the clearance to provide those court packages. Would it be more beneficial for the town of Stony Plain to maybe hire less officers and more support staff to do these reports, to do the data entry? Will that give us a cost savings and more police officers, what I say, on the streets?
It is a balance because there is a certain number of duties that the police officer still has to do. But that said, there are also other initiatives that I forgot to mention earlier, like the PROS data center that's being set up. It's where typically right now when a member has to enter a report, they have to come back to the office and they sit in front of a computer and they type out basically what unfolded in their investigation. And so with the idea of the PROS data center, which we're not a part of yet, is to have the members call in their report and it's entered by a data entry person. And this can be done with a Bluetooth device that they speak into as they're driving either to back to town or to another call or just simply patrolling and out watching a problem area. So again, I've had mixed reviews. Calgary Police used to do it all the time. Some of the members that I know and am friends with that had it down there, they loved it. And I asked him, well, why did they get rid of it then? He said budgets, and that was the only reason why they got rid of it. So I really hesitate to say that we don't need as many police officers and hiring more support staff, but I do definitely see a benefit to hiring more support staff to help the members be more productive. Now, if you look at the police to population ratio, Stony Plain is pretty average in terms of the number of police officers to population when it comes to other communities across Alberta. Now, Spruce Grove isn't as I don't want to throw them under the bus. They're not as good as Stony Plain is in that regard. That said, of course we would like more police officers. Of course we would like more support staff. It allows us to be more proactive, to do more community programs, to be more visible in the communities, provide a healthier workplace for the employees when they're not just going call to call to call. Our detachment is known as a busy spot, but it's also known as a really good spot to come because it's a great spot to learn. So I know I haven't really answered your question. More support staff is definitely, I would say, equally as good as more members because they can take certain duties away from the members. And I know that our support staff do wear a lot of hats within the detachment as well in doing different jobs, and it would be nice to have them more able to focus and get things done in a more timely manner as well.
Okay, thank you. And then I have another question regarding that. So in terms of, you mentioned things that we're doing now. You mentioned the PROS data center, also the license plate reader. What other improvements in technology are out there that maybe council could consider to make the RCMP's job easier so that we can have better policing and higher service levels in our community. Like you gave a mention about catching 2 stolen cars within 10 minutes as soon as that license plate reader was out. Things like that enhance our community safety, right, at a fraction of the cost, which then instead of having more officers, we can have more technology to help us combat and garner that information together.
Now, one of the things that we do enjoy is a good working relationship with Carl and then Dave from the city of Spruce Grove. And so I think that they are often very receptive to some of our ideas and trying to think outside of the box. And status quo isn't always, I mean, what works does work, but you know, you always have to constantly look at reinventing how you do things. And the license plate reader is a good example of that, you know, what we will do now, specific to your question about what technology right now would benefit us. I'd have to think about that and get back to you, but I know that I have gone to K Division and spoken with the guy who is the superintendent who's in charge of crime reduction for the province, and I said, if there's any pilot projects that you're looking to try, any new ideas that you have, we're an excellent detachment to try that in, because we have pretty much every piece of a detachment out here. We've got a major highway, we've got towns, we've got a city, we've got industrial area, we've got small, like somewhat isolated rural areas, we've got 2 First Nations communities. We've pretty much got everything but an international airport. So whatever you want to try with us, we're more than welcome. So I was just in Ottawa for 2 weeks for training, but sometime probably this month or next, I'm going to meet with him and see, because he said he does have an idea of something that we could potentially do. I have no idea what it is, but absolutely, we're always looking for new, smarter ways of doing our job.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, I think that ends my questions that I had. Councilor Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned the Pro Data Center. It is something that I've heard of. You said that the members you talked to in Calgary really liked it, but the costs were prohibitive. You also said we're not on it yet. So are there any jurisdictions around us that are on the Pro Data Center? How can we become part of it? And what are the costs associated with it?
Well, there would be no cost associated to the municipality here. It's just a service that the RCMP provides, and they have, you know, a limited capacity for certain things. And as it grows and expands within K Division, then they bring more communities on board. So I have for quite a while now been asking that we be included in that. And so I think that now I don't want to give a timeline, but we will be coming online with that at some point. And so it won't be any extra cost to the detachment or to the town. It'll just be something that, you know, something else that we're able to do.
Thank you.
And I'm just trying to think, did you ask anything else in there?
No, the cost was the big
Yes.
thing.
Councilor Matthews?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did ask if there were any jurisdictions around us.
Right, there are. There are other communities that are using it, and again, just anecdotally, in speaking to members, because I find that that's a good way to learn if something's working or not, is to talk to the people that are actually using it. And I've heard mixed reviews, so I mean, certainly it's something that we are willing to try, and it's because you can't criticize something or you know, say it doesn't work if you've never actually tried it. So Sherwood Park has a system that they're using, and so I've heard mixed reviews from the members, but again, like I said, other members that have used it absolutely love it. And I think it's kind of like a lot of times police, we're very set in our ways, and we don't like change sometimes, and you get used to doing things a certain way, and when somebody changes it on you, you hear grumbling and you hear negativity, and so, you know, you don't want to change too much at once, but at the same time, if there's a better way of doing your job, then absolutely it should be changed. So it's something that we're looking at hopefully going to soon.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Matthews, please.
Your Worship, just one quick question, a follow-up with regards to the SROs. Do you present to Parkland County, and do they know the value of that position in our community?
Well, just like the town of Stony Plain, I offered to increase my presence at the, and which you guys were receptive to, increasing my presence at the council meetings. And since I've been here, we've attended meetings about once a year with Parkland County. And I was, I shouldn't say this in open forum, but I was told that they'd rather see me in my police car doing police work than coming to meetings. And so that said, we did speak about the importance of the school resource officer. And again, I don't want to criticize them for decisions that they have to make, because there's budgetary reasons beyond my what I know about, and so I can't criticize it. But we did state our opinion on how important we felt those positions were.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Nope. Again, on behalf of our community and council, thank you much for the work that you guys provide in our communities and keeping us safe. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, members of council, should we move on to 4.4 or should we take a quick recess? Move on?
That's my vote.
That is good. Okay, so moving on to item 4.4, which is the presentation by the Stony Plain Public Library for the 2020 municipal funding request.
Good evening, Council and Mayor Choi. I'm just waiting for our treasurer to join me. Sometimes we get trapped in the seats in the gallery.
Morning. And again, thank you very much for joining us. There's a sign-up sheet if you can do that, and then just go ahead and introduce yourselves to council, and then you may start whenever you're ready.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Allison Stewart. I'm the director of the Stony Plain Public Library.
And good evening. My name is Valerie Temperton. I'm the treasurer for the Town of Stony Plain Library Board.
Before we start, I wanted to say thank you to Council, of course, for the support that we get from them annually, not just financially, but also out in the community as well. And I do also want to say thank you to the administration as well. We get a lot of support from them, and they were instrumental in helping us to put together our funding proposal this year. Also, if I'd known all the video streaming cameras were in the back, I would have put on my librarian bun for you guys. So our 2020 funding proposal, as noted in there, most of it is based on the uncertainty around provincial funding to libraries, not just strictly in terms of what I call the liquid cash in terms of the operating grant that we get, but also the infrastructure support that we get from the province as well, in particular the courier system, which is instrumental in providing the interlibrary loan service. That particular service helps us to provide better service to the people in the community because it helps us to reduce the amount of money we spend on materials because we have access to all the books in the province. So again, we don't know what that's going to look like. So a lot of our budgeting and our work this year is based on some a lot of uncertainty principles. We are also looking at ensuring that we maintain a balance of operational reserves, as well as so that we are prepared for contingencies that might happen in terms of provincial funding and other funding that we get as well, particularly from Parkland County library boards. We did also note very particularly that this is strictly an operational budget for 2020. It does not include any of the costs involved in moving the library into a new facility in the fall. Those expenses will be part of the capital budget that we will do for the new facility. Were there any questions in regards to any of the notes that we provided for that background page?
Do you want to do the full presentation first, then we just go through
that? So our 2020 projected budget, we are basically asking the town for $460,000. This is a very conservative estimate of what we will need to operate the library and provide funding. We are also calculating a reduction in funding from the province and also funding from Parkland County Library Board, because part of the funding we get from Parkland County Library Board is a percentage of their provincial funding. So if funding for libraries is reduced by the province, then the amount of funding they have to give to us will be less as well. We are operating on a no cost of living allowance increase for any of the staff, but we have included merit increases for staff. The vast majority of our staff are at the top level of the grid. So the merit increases is a fairly nominal amount. Our staff work really hard, so that's a very difficult decision to have made. We are also looking at expecting a higher expense at building maintenance starting once we've moved into the new building. It's going to be a larger building. It's going to cost more for us to maintain it. That's just the way that works. So we took a look, and the way we arrived at that number is that we based on the per capita funding allocation from 2018, which was $26.03. So the funding allocation in 2018 times the 2018 population was 447,000 and change. The town gave us 447,500. The 2020 funding is basically that 2603 per capita funding amount times the 2019 census, which is 17,842. That comes to $484,427. We've reduced that. We're able to reduce that and not ask for anything extra, and we're asking for $460,000. So a comparison based on what the town uses for other municipalities, these Beaumont, Brooks, Cochrane, Cold Lake, and Strathmore are the communities that the town uses for their comparators for other areas. We tend to use Camrose in the library as a comparator simply because their population is relatively close to ours and there's a lot of similarities there for us, including proximity to Edmonton and the size of the type of programming and so on that they do. So as you can see, Stony Plain's pretty much right through the middle there in terms of per capita funding with those comparators. The library director for Brooks is currently on leave, so I was unable to get their amounts other than 2018 for comparison, so I apologize for that. Sorry, not for Brooks, for Beaumont. So again, we're doing as a precautionary measure, we're expecting 20% less from the province and a 20% reduction of the provincial funding from the Parkland Country Board. Just a marginal increase in the new space, and we're doing the best we can with salaries, which is of course always the largest expense for any organization. We would be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for the services you provide in our community. Members of council, any questions? Okay. Councillor Mannes, go ahead.
Your Worship, I just have a question for our special guest. Can you tell me, well, I guess, or for administration, I thought that we also included for comparisons Fort Saskatchewan and Chestermere. Was that not what you used for compensation comparisons for municipalities?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Mannes, that's correct. For our compensation survey for the town, we did include those.
Okay, because that would be comparative sizes. So just wondering if possibly we could see the numbers of what Fort Saskatchewan and Chestermere are. I know that you're comparable, relatively comparable with Spruce Grove, and I looked at those numbers as well, but I'd like to see the others as well because we just changed this year as to what we would consider for comparisons.
I will have to get back to you on those because in order to get those numbers, I'll have to contact those two community libraries and get that information from them. But I will certainly get that and update the chart for you folks.
And I just have one other follow-up question. How does the 26.03, what is the formula?
It's just simply the amount of money provided to the library divided by our population.
Okay, right. Oh, that's right. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Laurie.
Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. I have a question in relation to the Parkland County Municipal Library Board grant that is provided. looking, I see you provided some information on how it is calculated, which is greatly appreciated. But what concerns me is when we look at the budget that was presented last year, we were budgeted to receive $126,000 from that grant. And what we're looking at is it looks like we were provided with $135,000, which is obviously beneficial to us. Now, this year you were expecting a reduction, but you're still proposing that we will be receiving more in 2020 than was budgeted as per the budget that was presented last year. What I'm curious about is what is the volatility in this funding distribution model? And has there been any level of protection put in place against the volatility? Because going from 126 to 135,000 when it's a positive is always great. But if that number shifts and based on the user-defined field that's used in this report is all of a sudden, say, 5% to the negative plus a cut, is there any level of volatility included in this? Is there any recognition of that in the budget?
So in the budget, the recognition of the volatility is strictly confined to the provincial funding. The reason we're not too concerned about the user-defined field, as you call it, which is basically the circulation, is that over the course since, I believe it was 2014, if I'm not mistaken, since we started using this formula, the rate of Parkland County circulation in our library has only increased. So we always budget conservatively for that, because we do the budget in August to present to council in September, October, but they don't calculate until November what that circulation is. Now, we run these reports on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, to take a look at it. So we are able to track throughout the year where we're at. So in June, generally when I'm calculating numbers, I'll look and see what those numbers are in June, extrapolate that over the course of the year and decide, okay, we're looking like we're consistent, so we'll stay with that number that we received from Parkland County for this year, or it's like there's like a 2-3% increase, which we don't consider enough to budget on. So generally speaking, we budget conservatively for that, and then if it's more, as you said, then that's great, but we always calculate that on the low side.
Excellent, appreciate that. I'm glad to see that that's something you have visibility into throughout the year. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, I'm the council rep on the library board, and I can tell you, council, that we've been looking at these numbers since at least June, and these are not the numbers that we were proposing, say, in June. So I have to say that our library board has done a lot of work in preparing us for some cutbacks, and I think we all should be very appreciative of our library board for doing that. But my question is, in looking at the numbers and being on the library board, I see pretty specific numbers when we proposed this budget to begin with. What have we had to do to get this budget to its current ask?
So our initial ask, when we started in June, as you remember, was to come to council and ask for $481,000. What we did to try and bring that down is basically eliminate any sort of cost of living allowance for staff. It's a toss-up. We could have reduced services and decrease the amount of programming that we do and maintain that as well. But it was decided that we would start here with that cost of living allowance and reduce that $20,000 ask and bring that down to that $460,000 that we could. So basically, we will maintain our current level of service, but we're basically doing it on the backs of our staff and expecting them to maintain that level of service, but not to expect any increase in compensation.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'll just point out that, and I don't know if this is the the place or if I should be doing this during our business item. But I'll just basically point out the fact that council has been very excited, and it's been a real initiative of ours to build a brand new library downtown. We have our reasons for that. It's a goal. It's an economic development strategy that we're using, a part of it. And we're doing this new initiative, and we're asking for cutbacks and for this to be placed on the backs of our staff, who may or may not decide that this is the way they want to go. So I just want to bring that out. I know this is an argument for our corporate plan, but I just have to congratulate our staff, our library board, to get these numbers down to what I hope will be agreeable with council.
Thank you. Any other questions and comments? So going back to your presentation under page 31 regarding your reserve policy updates. I'm just trying to get some clarity. On number 1, it says any annual surplus realized will be allocated to reserves. So my question is there a limit to that reserve? What is an acceptable reserve limit? Is it 10% of the operating budget, 20% of the operating budget, or 100% of the operating budget? Like, do you guys say, you know what, we've had enough, we need not put it in reserves anymore?
I think that that would be super awesome if we ever hit that point. I don't foresee that ever happening. In the event, for our operational reserves, the expectation that the board has determined is to have 1 year's worth of provincial funding at the 2018 level of funding. So $89,505, so it's $90,000 as an operational reserve, and that's based number on the provincial funding that was budgeted and provided to our library in 2018. Now, again, what that number will look like after October 24th, we don't know. But so that's what the library is basing that cap on for operational reserves.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity. And then my second question regards to point number 2, where it says the library board will use these operating reserves to soften any future funding reserves or impacts, and they will be used to assist to maintain. And I have a question of clarity on number C, where it says balance funding requests to municipal partners. Does that mean that if you come to the municipal partners and we don't fund you your full amount, you'll take the reserves out of there to balance it? Or are you asking one municipality more than another, then you're going to backfill it with this reserve?
I'm not sure I understood the second part of your question. That should actually be worded better to municipal partner, because the only municipality that we go to and request funding from is the town of Stony Plain. We do not go to Parkland County Council at all. They've made it very clear that for them, the correct line of request is their library board goes to them and requests funding for the libraries, and then we deal with their library board. They've made it clear that they do not want other library boards doing requests to their council directly. So the balancing funding request to municipal partners should basically read if there's a reduction in funding from either the town of Stony Plain or from Parkland County Library Board.
Okay, so it's not municipal partners, it's municipal partner.
Partner, yes.
Okay, because I had that clarity there, because I thought maybe you just ask somebody less and just here's a reserve, they'll pump, boost the difference.
Well, if Chestermere wants to give us money, we're not going to say no, so.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Laurie?
Just one more question as I go through some of the numbers that are presented here tonight. One of the things that I've identified is that, as you mentioned, the ask was reduced by $21,000 based on the COLA adjustment. And this was due to the original ask, I think it was $481,000 is what was being considered a municipality. When I look at this as well, that before everything's taken into consideration, you have a reduced ask from Parkland County of a little over $35,000 based on a potential 20% reduction from the provincial budget. And then that also is approximately another 18,000 of reduced funding from the province themselves. So when the budget is presented by the provincial government, should these decreases not actually be present, will the municipal contribution ask be reduced then by the library, or can we expect some level of change in the budget?
So we have 4 different options if that happens, and the first option, of course, is to provide that cost of living allowance increase to staff. The second option is for us just to use that as surplus and move it into reserves. And the third option is to reduce the funding request to the municipality. The fourth option is to balance between reserves and reducing our funding requests. Our operational reserves are basically depleted after this year. So it's not fiscally responsible for the board to have no operational reserves in place. But again, balancing the pressures on the municipality, probably what we would do is try and find a balance between those two options and do a little bit of one from column B and one from column C.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, just in recognizing that, just a quick math on the contributions would show if there's no provincial cuts, it would be looking at approximately $53,000 increase in the revenue aspect of the budget, which even after reallocating the COLA at $21,000 would leave approximately a $32,000 variance. Given the particular budget constraints that are in place this year and what we're anticipating from some of the municipal contributions from the provincial government, I would be very open to the conversations as to how that potential usage of those dollars would be allocated.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none more, thank you very much for your presentation, and definitely, like I said before, definitely appreciate the work and the services that are provided by the library. It is a difficult time ahead of us, and I think if we work together, we'll make sure that we can continue to provide the service levels that our residents are used to, and be streamlined as we move forward into our new location to provide even better services to our residents.
You bet. That is the plan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that ends our presentation, so I'll call for a 10-minute recess before we go into business items. 1 is a downtown library project update. Go ahead, administration.
Your Worship, members of council, so tonight just bringing a quick update to you with respect to the building that's has been mentioned once already in chambers this evening. It's been some time since we've talked about it, and our previous discussion has been about purchasing a space and some of the challenges that we had in the earlier stages of this project with respect to getting that done expediently. So just an update this year, we're going back and forth with the developer with respect to certain documents that the town of Stony Plain required in order for that project to start. That project did receive a foundation-only permit a few years back, and then we were working with them to get the rest of the building designed and inspected and go through the motions that we need to for a structure of that size. It wasn't until about February of this year that we concluded that process with the developer. One of the hangups was the size and the height of the building. The height of the building and some of the things that they were proposing to do took it from, it is only a 6-story building, but because of the area of the mezzanine and potential occupancy on the roof, it turned it into an 8-story building. And an 8-story building versus a 6-story building from a safety codes perspective is a completely different code evaluation. So we had several good meetings with code evaluations. We had several good meetings with internal staff and also the developer. And the documents were received, they were inspected, and as you can see, there's a flurry of construction happening on that site, and they've done a tremendous amount of work this season. So the bottom floor is structurally, it's there. They still have to put in the doors and windows in order to seasonally tighten that up. So they can't put heat to that building yet because it would just basically heat the downtown. So we'd have pretty clean streets, but a very chilly building. There's a crane on site. They're going very quickly with the residential units. I think they're onto their 2nd or 3rd lift of residential units on that site. Their goal is to basically winterize as many floors as possible. Once they're comfortable with the floor above the library, not damaging some of the improvements that we may do, they'll turn the space over to us. So we're currently going through the design process with Cassian, which we engaged earlier this year. They're working with a smaller group from the library, myself and a guy that we've hired to assist us with the project. We're receiving pretty good updates with them, and they're very close to providing us a final design and a Class C costing probably this week or next week related to that particular project. There are a couple images there that we provided with the report, which are basically what they're going on in terms of some final design images for walking into the building, into the new library space. You can see that's the front entrance, so you can see some of the features that they're including. A good part of the library is also celebrating our Indigenous relations and celebrating that and some of our culture and heritage. And they're looking for shelving that, if you go into our current library, you can't see over a lot of the shelving. This is lower shelving so that the space, when you look through and from your own eye height, you're seeing through the building, not into walls and into shelving. So I think they're doing a very good job in terms of a modern space that will take advantage of the very large windows that are in the front part of that building. The ceilings, if you've driven by or walked by or had an opportunity to peek in, 21-foot ceilings are grand. They're going to provide a very nice space for the library. It's going to be great for the folks that go over and utilize that space. So from a budget perspective, we were approved $3.6 million for this project. The cost of the land came in at the 14,800 square feet was $3 million, which we finalized this year. We sold the lots for about 300, so we're working with about 900,000 for the construction part. We are working with the library in terms of have indicated to them that there's an expectation that there's some fundraising and some of their own efforts and energies and grant writing that would help support the overall cost and construction of that 14,800 square feet. So they have received one grant so far, and I think they're in the works of either hiring or working with a professional fundraiser. So they're working hard to raise funds themselves for the improvement of the interior of this 14,800 square foot space. happy to answer questions on the quick update.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Council, any questions of clarity, understanding? Councilor Lowry?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to administration, thank you again for the update. When you speak of the $900,000 for tenant improvement and design of the 14,800 square feet, does that also include the fixtures for the unit, or is that simply the actual build out? So does that include, like I said, the shelving, the chairs, the decorative type items, or is that strictly the flooring, walls, etc.?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Lowry, if the entire space, including shelving and furniture, came in at 900,000, we would probably utilize the full amount for both of those particular items. Probably would suggest that's pretty shy for including furniture and those other types of things. So the library is applying for funding that relates specifically to furniture and those types of things for the space.
Excellent, thank you. And so that was my question then, the understanding is, so the 900,000 is the expected build out, and we're asking the library to contribute by looking for grants, donations, etc., for the actual upfitting of the library then?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Lowry, and also if there's a shortfall on, or I don't want to call it a shortfall, if the design comes back, the desired design comes back and it's over this 900,000, then we would also expect that the library we would have discussion with the library with respect to an option of us not coming back to council and saying we need another $1 million or $500,000 or 200,000 or 100,000. We would work with the library to try and get as much of that funding that we do not have or are shy of through grants and fundraising, as opposed to coming back to the chambers.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I'm very glad to see that they have secured a grant from the Government of Alberta in the amount of $350,000 to date, and I hope they can continue that success in their fundraising.
Thank you. And thank you for that question. I'm just going to ask Councillor Bennett as the council representative. Can you provide us the numbers of what the restricted reserve is for this? I believe that the library has been saving money for furniture and etc. Do you recall what the restricted reserve is right now, currently sitting at?
No, I don't recall that. I will tell you that the goal for the fundraising is $3 million, and basically it's for enhancements and as our general manager just explained, for some of the design features that are important to make this library really part of our community culture.
Okay, thank you for that. I just have a question of clarity then. You said the goal is $3 million?
Fund our capital campaign.
For the library?
Yes. It's a goal.
Okay. Okay, I'm just wondering because I think I'm just reading that the purchase and the construction of the building was $3 million. So.
Capital campaign is $3 million. We're doing a feasibility study right now to see if that is a feasible amount, and working with the campaign fundraiser just to determine that that is an amount that is reasonable in these economic times. But you know, when we started looking at this library, we were working with some public members and community members, and I'll just, and perhaps our general manager can comment on this, and part of it was to make this library truly inclusive and to have some facility that everyone can use and be comfortable in. So, for instance, the washrooms will have some capabilities for people with mobility issues, and I'm trying to think of the group that we're working with. It's not ACT. It's can you help me?
Yeah, I think just cohesive communities.
Yes, cohesive communities. And so, you know, it's those kinds of enhancements to this library that will truly set it apart.
Thank you.
Your worship, I do have a number from the library from the end of 2017. I have their financial statements, and it was about 95,000 in the expansion reserve for furniture and fixtures. So I'm sure it's increased since that. That was at the end of 2017.
Okay. So roughly they have $450,000 right now. Thank you. Any other questions of clarity and understanding? Councilor Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And actually, back to the representative on the library board. Being that the current scheduled occupancy for the library is September 2020, is there a timeline when we anticipate that the feasibility study would be done and when this campaign will actually kick off? I would assume that there's some very important decisions on the build out and the kitting of the library are going to have to be made in early spring, and that doesn't leave a very large window to raise what sounds to be about $2.5 million if the goal is $3 million.
I know that the fund manager is doing interviews right now with the library board and with other community members. So the feasibility study has been started. And I can't remember the timeline, but it's not a very long timeline for that feasibility study. So it'll be coming out fairly soon. I will say that the Friends of the Library are taking the lead on the fundraising, and it's not the library board that's taking the lead on that. So they've done some really good work in the past with different fundraising efforts, and so they're taking the lead on that with the help of a hired consultant.
Just as a follow-up, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
Are we aware, do the Friends of the Library currently have any money set aside in addition to the grant and the reserve?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Thank you.
From past fundraising? Is that what you're referring to?
Knowing that the library has been moving for almost 2 years now, I'm just curious as to if this is something that they've been focusing on during that time frame, knowing that there would be some expenses, and if it's something that the Friends of Society has been working towards in addition to the monies being put away through reserves and the grants being applied for.
I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for clarity and understanding? See none. Council Pacheco, motion please.
That council accept the downtown library project update for information.
Okay. Any discussion and debate from members of council? Deputy Mayor?
I had the opportunity to as the second, is that the right word? That's not the right word. As the backup to Judy. Alternate, thank you. Anyhow, and they were approving the budget at the time, and of course they were all very excited. I mean, the discussion was just for the 2019 budget, but of course everybody had so many questions about the new library. That's sort of what a lot of it sort of round up going to. Anyhow, while discussing this, my mother said, "Oh well, it was, I remember when I sat on the board and we were very excited to move as well to the current location." So anyhow, with that in mind, I was just kind of curious because even before that, of course, there's the original library. So. Just if we are looking at any way of sort of capturing that history somewhere in the building or anything like that.
Do we have?
Your Worship, I don't have an answer for that, but I will note that for sure.
Thank you.
That's right. I believe it's gone from the old town hall when it was in building to the community center to the Parkland building, and then finally down to there, and then out to the back downtown. So, a history that we won't see again for a while. Members, council, any more questions? Okay, I don't see none. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. That is carried. Move on to 5.2, the Stony Plain 2020 municipal funding request presentation, where we had a presentation from the board. So, Councilor Bennett, please.
I move the Town Council accept the Stony Plain Public Library 2020 funding request presentation for information.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, any questions and comments regarding the presentation on the budget? Okay. See none, call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Move on to information items and council discussion. We'll start with Councillor Matties. Do you have anything to add today?
One addition to when I had spoken about the AMA conference, it was excellent. We enjoyed many of the conversations we had, but I wanted to mention again about recycling, extended producer responsibility. And one of the things that I've noticed in the last year and a half, I've been asked to wear t-shirts an awful lot, you know, so to order a t-shirt for different very important causes in the community. But I'm concerned where the t-shirts eventually end up, and I do know that if we take them to, for example, to one of the recycling places, that they could, or to one of the Goodwill, that they could be provided to communities overseas and places like that. But I want to make sure that we're cognizant that whenever we order a t-shirt, that there's a very good likelihood that it will go into a landfill. And I was hoping that we could consider alternatives where we possibly can. So one of the things that we had found at the AMA were these little tags. And I spoke with my sister the other day, and when she was doing some fundraising activities, they just basically wore the same t-shirt, but put like a sticker on the back and just change the sticker as opposed to having a whole new t-shirt. So just wanted to suggest that if we can consider that, because if somebody is, you know, some people may keep a closet full of t-shirts or a box full of t-shirts in their closet, but for the most part, I think that there's a good chance that they're going to be somewhere where we don't want them to be.
Thank you. Councillor Lloyd, please. Speak up, Councillor Lloyd. Okay, he's not here, so we're
just got skipped.
Councillor Laurie.
Just one question through to administration. I'm just wondering if you can update us on the status of photo radar in the community.
Your worship, through the councillor, Laurie, could you elaborate on, that's a big question.
I know there was some discussion at previous council meetings a while ago in regards to some difficulties with the first RFP. Then it went back out. I'm just wondering, do we have, I guess, first of all, do we have current active photo radar in the community? How is that looking in comparison to our previous system? And what projection are we looking at the difference in the potential fine revenue for the year?
Your worship, through the councillor Laurie. So yes, first part of the year we did have some challenges with our selected provider. We did go back out to the two remaining providers. We received one RFP back, and we entered into a negotiation and an agreement with Global again. So we do have, and we have had since mid-year, so May, June, a contract with Global, and they're activating, and it's fortunate for us because the zones are all the same. They're doing the same operations, but essentially we were not operating for the first 5 months of this year. So they're back in the zones, and they're back. Fine revenues are coming back into the town of Stony Plain. We did have seen decreases the last few years with respect to automated traffic revenues. That's simply because we're not writing as many violations, because people are complying. So I expect that will be the same trend moving forward. We're working with them on some of the more trickier spots in terms of solutions. Golf Course Road, we don't permit them to be on the boulevard. We don't permit them to be in certain locations simply because we don't have the right safety mechanisms in place for how we like to operate photo radar. So we are looking to them to provide us some potential solutions in terms of operating in those particular areas, which some examples of those are, it's a box, it's got the camera, but the operator is 200 feet. They have to see the camera. They can't just put the box, it takes pictures all day and they come back and take the film. That's not how it works. The operator still is in communication with the particular box, but it permits them to be in a safe location. It permits them to operate in areas like Golf Course Road as an example that has no opportunity for the vehicle to be parked safely in order to conduct their business. So something that they'll come back to us with as an option. It's not something that we've typically done in the past, and we would have to come back and see what our tolerance is for that type of deployment.
And just as a follow-up to that, Your Worship, so since they've become back operational since the May-June timeframe, are they in the community approximately the same amount of hours as they were in previous years?
Yeah, so Your Worship, through to Councillor Laurie, they're in the community between 20 and 32 hours. Our contract is 32 hours. It depends on what the trends are in terms of the violation in that particular zone. So in October each year, they put, I think we did 17 or 18 different zones. They put cameras out, and over a 3-week period, they monitor. So we typically look at the zones where there's a ton of red. So red means a lot of violations, and our goal is to turn it blue, which means people are complying with. So they're typically in the zones where there's more red, which is typically school zone and playground zone.
And just confirm that was 20 to 32 hours a week?
Per week, yes.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to add on to that, then based on our last presentation, we're still spending 85% of time in school zones to make sure that their children are safe. Thank you. Councillor Bennett?
Yes, I'm happy to announce that that a date has been found for the groundbreaking for the Meridian Housing Foundation new build. It's called Folkestone Manor. And the groundbreaking will be October 18th from 11 to about 11:45. Formal invitations will be coming to council, but it is a public event, and so I'd like to encourage all the public to come out and celebrate with us as we advance forward on this project.
Thank you very much for that announcement. Very good to see that coming forward. With the groundbreaking, do you know when the actual ceremony will take place between that 11 to 11:45 time frame?
11.
Right, so Councillor Deputy Mayor Meyer, you're on call for that one.
See,
Yes.
I circled it already. I was.
Good, good. I'll be at Northern Alberta Mayors and Reeves Caucus that morning. Okay, we're going over to Councillor Pletchko, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say Friday night was a great evening to welcome a very large delegation that came over from Chicago. It was a great opportunity to welcome into our community and have them partake in some of the culture that we have around our community and get to an opportunity to see some of Alberta, I think, over the next 10 days or so that they're here. I look forward to the closing portion of it, and it was tremendous to stand up on the stage and welcome them and see all of the people within our community that step up to the table to help out with that. So a great shout out to everybody in our community for doing a great thing within our community and working with a country that is a long ways away.
Thank you, Councillor Pletchko, and thank you for bringing greetings on behalf of the Mayor and Council and the community. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
I almost forgot my thing. Thank you, Your Worship. So just to that note, I actually just happened to run into a small delegation of them touring the downtown today, and it was a great opportunity. One of the translators was there, so I got to tell a little joke that I think went over well. They chuckled, so it must have been good.
Yeah. Lost in translation?
No, I think it actually, it was, I'll recall it later to you if you like, but I think it went well. But on a more serious note, I did have 2 residents, as well as I personally witnessed, just something I'd like, a couple traffic things I'd like the administration to be aware of. Now, I know they're provincial highways, so there's that. But heading south on 779, trying to make a left-hand turn onto 52nd, somebody said, people are starting to push it in terms of what's safe, and it goes to Judy's earlier comment about left-hand turn signals. So I as well have heard that, as well as the left-hand turn heading east on 16A, north onto Boundary Road. There seems to be some issue getting the left turn signal to activate there. People are running reds. Can you believe church people breaking the law to get to church? So anyhow, those two things I'd like to make you guys aware of.
Thank you. Can staff follow up on that, please? We heard the answer for the left signal on 52nd, going on 52nd on from 779 from the presenter, but the left on 16A going towards Boundary Road North.
Sorry, Councillor. You're looking just for a follow-up on the 16A?
Yeah,
Okay.
it seems, I've witnessed it a couple of separate times myself, but as well people have been mentioning it to me. It seems to not either catch or activate the left-hand turn signal, and it just remains red. And like I say, to the point where people just start running that red just to make the left-hand turn.
I'll have to take that and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like, I used to watch several cars efficiently get through there, I mean, constantly, and I don't understand how that could not be a positive for road traffic. And Judy's kind of mentioning the same thing, and it would be nice to have a second review of that, because it's worked all these years, and I'm not sure why it would be different now.
Could be. And also, it could be different because if they did their traffic counts based on a new alignment, so the new alignment allows for 2 signals at the same time instead of right now it's a 3-signal rotation, which then waits longer, and that's probably why people are waiting. But once it gets realigned and it's a 2 signals, so it goes one way and then the other way, then it will provide some efficiencies. And I think that's the reason why they took it out as they redesigned it. But it is good.
Your Worship, if I may on that one, I know I can ask our manager of engineering to contact AT again directly and just seek another explanation. I know that there was some answer given tonight, but I know that they will, they're also able to provide a more fulsome answer in writing that, because it certainly is a question in the community that deserves an answer. Whether the answer is agreed to or not, it can be clarified, so to speak, and we can find something out and provide it just to councils that you guys can communicate that as well to the public when it comes up.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Deputy Mayor? Thank you. And thank you for being on call as Deputy Mayor. I'll be letting you know when other duties as assigned.
I also have to mention, I'm pretty sure I picked up a speeding ticket getting back for the Rodina. I have your present out in the car for you too as well.
I can't pay for that speeding ticket.
No, it's a nice little wood thing I'll give you. It'll cost you $90.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Your Worship, if I may just quickly too, I didn't get a chance to do it earlier, but I do want to welcome Brett Newstead to the council chambers. This is his first official all-time being here for the entire evening with us. The general manager is on holidays at this point in time, but you didn't ask him too many questions. I had a little bit of time to work with him this morning just to let him know that you're a good group. So proved it to him. But Your Worship, just want to acknowledge Brett's first time here in the council chambers.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing it up. And I was just wanting to, now that we're in information items and council discussion, why don't you introduce yourself to council? I remember I mentioned to you last time when you sat there that next time you come to council, I was going to ask you to do that, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Your Worship, because I did tell him to be on his toes that you might ask him to do a bit of an intro this time.
Okay. So yeah, welcome to the town of Stony Plain, and go ahead and just introduce yourself to us.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm really excited to be here this is my first time in council here, so a little bit about myself. I'm born and raised in St. Albert, which is where I'm originally from. I've been doing engineering, municipal engineering, since I got out of university. Mix of different roles, different hats, if you will, project management, infrastructure management, transportation management. I recently just completed my master's in civil engineering, actually last year. When I'm not working hard here and trying to keep things going, I have a dog at home named Porthos, and I'm recently married 2 years ago. So we're just doing the family thing and really enjoying it.
Okay. Excellent, and thank you, and welcome to our organization. One tip of advice is, see this little thing? You're gonna just lean right into it,
Okay.
and then just introduce yourself again.
Can I make up a new story now?
No. Okay, thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so council, just a few updates. As mentioned by Council Pletchko, the Chicago delegation is here for a full 10 days. I think they'll be here visiting their community, then heading over to Jasper to have a look there and coming back to spend Thanksgiving with us. I think just yesterday, they had a Halloween party because it's not very yet recognized or celebrated in Japan, so it's nice to have the kids celebrate and experience that as well. And they'll be here till, I believe, next Tuesday morning, which is a nice and early send-off of the breakfast meal, so hopefully we'll see you there. And this Wednesday on the 9th is a luncheon with, environmental stewardship luncheon with the Green Sheik. And the Green Sheik is known for his environmental education and stewardship that he's been promoting around the globe. So that'd be an interesting luncheon if you're able to make it. I believe there's still tickets available, so hopefully if you have the opportunity, purchase a ticket and we'll see you there. As well as mentioned by Inspector Locken, October 11th at 1:30 is the official grand opening of the RCMP station, the Parkland Detachment, and we'll see everybody there as well. Again, on the 15th, before our next council meeting, is the unveiling of the time capsule. 25 years ago, I'd be interested to see what members of the community put underneath that little ground. And I believe, are we putting another time capsule in?
Yep, Your Worship, we will be putting another time capsule in the monument or whatever that's technically called, I'm not sure.
Okay. So has members of council been requested to bring something?
I'll ask our general manager, who knows, I think, a little bit more about the process that's been used on how to, on the time capsule itself.
I worship. Sorry. Can you just ask again what you were looking for regarding the time capsule?
Yes. Is members of council asked to produce something to go into the time capsule?
Not that I'm aware of at this point. However, I'm certainly willing to take back any recommendations of items that you would like to contribute to the time capsule. Ooh.
Hey, just because I'm short doesn't mean I can fit in the box. Doesn't mean I'm going to go in there. Right. Okay, with that brings us to the next meeting, which again is on a weird day. This is the first time we've actually had a council meeting on a Wednesday evening, and that's because the Monday is a holiday. We usually have it on Tuesday. We've deferred that to the Wednesday because we're having the time capsule opening on the Tuesday. So if you're not confused by that yet, good. Then I won't see you on next Wednesday. But with that, good work, administration. Thank you for getting those presentations all lined up. It was good and very informative for members of council to hear as we go into budget planning and corporate planning and looking at ways to increase our efficiencies and build our community together. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.